Welcome to course 161 from Learn It First. This is the Transact-SQL programming course for SQL Server 2008 and R2. I'm Scott Whigham. That's my smiling face you see right there. I thought what I would do in this video, just take a couple of minutes, kind of give you what the chapters are, what we're going to cover, who the course is for, how it's different from some of our other courses, and then we'll jump into the rest of the course. So let me just sort of get through it here. We've got 17 chapters. It's a big course. It's a very comprehensive course on T-SQL programming here. We've got a lot of hands-on exercises, a lot of our video exercises, hands-on labs. We'll be building the objects, the stored procedures, the triggers, all that good stuff. The coverage here is at sort of the beginner to intermediate through the intermediate advanced. So how I think about it is, let me do this. Let me get a pen. I'll draw this out for you here. So like if you have like a scale of a 100 equals a novice, a newbie, whatever you want to call it, and 500 is a guru, well, we're right in the middle, right? So we're going to be in the 200 to 400 range. So that means this is not a beginner's level course, right? And it's also not a for gurus only course. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next video. The next video is really about who should take the course. But really it's the 200 to 400. That doesn't mean that if you are a novice or a beginner, this is the bad choice for you. It just means that you might have to watch the videos a few extra times, or you may need some extra courses to help out. And I'll talk about those here in couple of slides. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's go through the chapters right now just to give you a quick idea. Let me give you a suggestion before I do. With this video, if you download this video, it includes a PDF of what I'm going to show you. Sometimes really long, like I'll go to the next page, really long, see 17, really long sets of text are sometimes easier to read than they are to hear somebody. So don't be shy. Load the PDF up. Take a look at that if you want to skim through it. So just look for the download the file. You'll have the PDF if you haven't already done so. All right, so the course really starts here at chapter 2. You know, you should watch chapter number 1. However, those of you that have taken some of Learn It First's courses with me before, you'll recognize that most of chapter 1, it's somewhat of a formula, right? Hey, here's how the course is laid out. Here's who should take the course. Here are the coding conventions that we're going to use, things like that. So the course really begins at chapter 2 here. Chapter 2 is all about the fundamentals, if statements, print, the different types of data types here, what the difference between date and time data types are, as opposed to date time. Okay. Chapter 3, now that you know your data types, let's actually start using those to create permanent objects. We'll create tables. We'll create temporary tables. We'll talk about synonyms, the different types of constraints. When should I use a unique constraint or a unique index? What's the difference in a unique constraint and a unique index? Chapter 4, views, user-defined functions. Okay. Chapter 5, indexes, major thing that all of you need to know if you're going to be working on a performance-driven application. Chapter 6, adding and removing and updating data. Chapter 7, if you're going to do that, you got to know about transactions and locks. It would be kind of difficult to do that on a big system without having a good understanding of the atomicity and the acid properties and all kinds of stuff. Chapter 8, working with both the DDL, the DML triggers as well. Let's get into the next page here. Chapter 9, this is what a lot of people are really coming here for. These 3 sections right here. All right, stored procedures. When you talk SQL programming, most of the time people are thinking about stored procedures. If you asked 100 professional SQL developers to talk about SQL programming, stored procedures is going to wind up in their first paragraph probably 99 times out of 100. We just all end up doing it. Tends to be the interface we expose to the outside world for the database. So we're going to actually, it's such a big topic, we're going to consume 2 chapters with it. We're going to break it down to where, I'm sorry about that, to where 1 chapter is about returning data to the client. How to do design patterns, how to do singletons, how to return multiple result sets. Right? We're going to talk a lot of different options here. Then we'll talk about performing actions, object relational mapping techniques, doing CRUD techniques. Some of that stuff may not mean anything to you, and rest assured those are really popular ways of working with stored procedures, and if you don't know what those are, you probably should. So we're going to talk about adding data, modifying data, working with dynamic SQL. Should you? How do you? How do you pass in lots of parameters? Right? We'll talk about output parameters, input parameters. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to cover. That's a major part. Obviously, optimization and performance, it's going to be a big piece for everything as well. Now, from that point, we're left with chapters 12 through 17. Okay, look. Chapters 2 through 11 are the meat of the course. They are the fundamentals of Transact-SQL programming. Any job you take anywhere, those are the fundamentals. You can't be a Transact-SQL programmer without being knowledgeable in chapters 2 through 11. Chapters 12 through 16 or even 17, you could include that in there as well. These tend to be more of the lagniappe, the icing on the cake, the specialized, the little things that you know that not everybody knows, or the things that your shop does that not all the other shops do. So they tend to be more specialized. Like you might be working with GIS. You might be dealing with geospatial data here. You might be working with encryption and you need to encrypt all of the data because of some government mandate. You might be doing C# and SQL Server together, and you need to learn a little bit more about CLR programming. You might be storing documents in the database, and you need to be able to search across those documents. Right? So chapters 2 through 11, that's the bulk of this course. That's where we're going to focus most of our time and energy, or rephrase that, as the course developer. That's where I'm going to spend most of our time. And chapters 12 through 17, in many cases, they're going to be, here's a view of this topic from 10,000 feet. It's not going to be detail. It's going to be a width, give you a broad introduction to a lot of topics in sections 12 through 17. Whereas in chapters 2 through 11, we do depth. We go straight down. We learn the details of stored procedure design and stored procedure coding, for example. Okay? And you might ask yourself, well, why aren't we covering these others at that same level of detail? Time. I mean, that's really it. If we were to do this video training class in a live training classroom, I think we would probably take up about 7 to 9 days of time. Okay? Really, this is a lot of stuff here. Okay? The chapters 2 through 11 are going to take us about 5 to 6 days, and these other kind of intros would take us the final 2 to 4 days, or whatever the math would work out to. So really, we could have, if we wanted to, we could spend and have maybe a 3-day class just on XML data and Transact-SQL programming. We could do for certain a 3-day class on CLR programming. These guys down here, we could probably spend 3 days between them, 1-day classes amongst the 3 of them there. So it's just a matter of time, right? We have to just focus on the key elements, and I'll try to give you that broad knowledge of these other topics. Okay? All right, so there are, as I mentioned, a couple of course prereqs. This is not a Transact-SQL for someone who's never heard of SQL before course. Okay? This will work best for you if you already know the basics of SQL. In fact, just to be specific, it works best for you if you already know the basics of the select command. I don't need you to be able to write a 25 table join flawlessly from scratch in Notepad. Okay, that's cool. Congrats, but that's not something that I have to have from you to take this course. But if you already know select from and where, doesn't even matter if you know joins and subqueries and such, then you're going to learn more in this class. And just for those of you who might think that writing the select statement is something that you'd like to do a little more of, that's what Course 160 is. Course 160 is a course that I did with Learn It First. It's nothing but the select statement. So I think it's just another really big course, and it's just the select statement. That's all it is. We cover joins. We cover what's the difference between a left join and a right join. What's the difference between a Cartesian product and a cross join? Okay, the answer is nothing. Okay, the answer to the first one, well, it depends. Okay, so if you're interested in that, you need to look at taking that one. And I'll tell you, I've gotten this question quite a bit once we announced this Transact-SQL course. What's the difference in this course and the SQL query writing course, Course 160? Okay, so what's the difference? They both are about Transact-SQL, aren't they? Well, yeah, but here's the thing. Course 160 only covers the select statement. We don't cover views. We don't cover user-defined functions. We don't cover stored procedures, triggers. None of those programming constructs. We give a basic overview of the data types. We talk about the date and time, but we don't get into any of the programming constructs. No CLR programming, none of that. It goes into nothing except the select statement. Now this course, we're in course 161 right now, the Transact-SQL programming course. We already assume you have a basic knowledge. You do not have to have a knowledge of select up through the end of course 160. Just a basic knowledge is fine. But this is where we talk about the stored procedures, the programming constructs, the CLR programming. Now in the PDF, I've got a couple of other related courses that you might dig. These are all of our SQL 2008 based courses. Now, let me just kind of tell you what versions that this course is for, and we'll wrap it up here and get you on your way here. This is a SQL 2008 /R2. Okay. Now what does the slash mean? Well, it really means that it covers both SQL 2008 and SQL Server 2008 R2. Yes, those are two completely different versions, but they're similar, right? They're really very similar. Somebody says, okay, well, wait a minute. We're using SQL Server 2005. Can I take this course? All right, technically, this is a SQL 2008 /R2 course, but 90% of the code works the exact same way. Okay? Now, there's going to be idiosyncrasies, new features in 2008 or new features in 2008 R2. We're going to talk about that in an upcoming video. We have little icons that we'll be using throughout the course to say this only works on R2. This only works in 2008 to try to help you understand the difference. But I think you'd be completely fine taking this course if you were a SQL 2005 person. 90% of the code is going to overlap. So we'll talk more about that as we kind of develop through the course. So unless I tell you otherwise, just assume that the syntax is going to work between the different versions. And we'll talk about things like the new features in 2008 R2, new features in 2008, when we come to those sections, okay, whenever we get to that spot in the course. All right, I mentioned it earlier, but let's just close out with this. Download this video if you haven't already. Get the PDF. It is the same exact file name in the directory as this is, just as a PDF extension. Because at the end of this video, there's a breakdown of all 17 chapters that I'm not going to read here on video. that I leave for you to open up and take a look at. Okay, so look at it. Next up, what we're going to talk about is who should take this course. But go get this PDF, because watch, when I go to the next page, see, here's a breakdown of chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3, and right? You go download the PDF and you play with that. I'll see you in the next video when we talk about who should take this course.